Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour, brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal, and this week we have the pleasure of being joined by longtime MMA fighter, UFC competitor, Anthony Rocco Martin. Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Doing great.
I'm all right, Anthony. I just we were talking before we started recording, but really quick, because I didn't know you had a podcast. I follow you on Twitter, and I'm surprised I haven't seen tweets about it and stuff like that. So, would you mind telling us the name of it?
Yeah, it's Rocco and Ryan. So I'm out there with Ryan Giro right now, and we're doing our little podcast. I'm so bad at social media, so I always tell him like, hey, just tell me what to post, what to do. And I'm pretty much just retweeting what he says. I need to get better. That's what I need to get better at. Obviously, mostly in this sport, I feel like social media is very important, but something that I'm lacking at.
What made you get into podcasting? Just wanted to be more involved, or looking for another outlet to talk fights or be in the fight world outside of actually being in the cage?
Yeah, well, my ex-girlfriend was always upset at me because all I would do is talk fights there. So it'd be 24/7. All I do is talk fights. I watched all the fights. And I enjoy fighting. You know, I enjoy the whole martial art. I enjoy the competitive spirit of all the athletes. I enjoy their stories. So there's a lot more to it that I feel like there's some fighters that I'm not fans of fighters that aren't a fan of the sport, you know. And I do feel like there's a couple of them out there that doesn't make sense to me. That I really think that martial arts changed my life, and the sport of fighting has changed my life, and I love talking about it. It's just something that I enjoy doing, and after fighting, it's something that I feel like that I want to do afterwards.
I that's interesting that you said that, because one of the things I as I was researching you for this interview, I saw that you were playing football, and then you kind of discovered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's how you got into mixed martial arts. Can you just talk about your journey and how you started fighting?
Yeah, I was playing football my whole life. I went out to NDSU to play football in college, and I just kept getting in fights. So I ended up getting kicked out of school actually for fighting. And one of my buddies that was on the football team, he said, "Hey, you should come check out this gym in St. Cloud, Minnesota." Brock Larson was there, and I walked in the gym, and a little 125-pounder named Dan O'Neill absolutely mopped the floors with me. And I at this time, this is when I was watching George St. Pierre a little bit. I thought I was the baddest man on the planet. Okay, I truly believed. I was like, oh, I get in there with George, I could beat George. You know, because you're like those delusional people that don't understand the sport. And this is the problem with fighting, is that that regular normal people like myself that have no experience for some reason think that we could beat up these professional fighters. Yeah. And long and behold, this amateur 125-pounder absolutely destroyed me. And I never left. I had Matt burn all over my face. Brock was telling me like, "Hey, if you wanna take a couple days off, let your wounds heal." I'm like, "Nope, this is it." And then literally about 3 months later, I quit my job. I went full in. A year later, I went pro. So it was like something I just fully invested in the second I found it.
Well, how long had you been training before you had your first amateur fight?
3 months, I think, 3-4 months, and then I had my first amateur fight. I only had 2 amateur fights, and it was a struggle to get them. It was a struggle to get them because Brock knew knew that I was a good athlete, and Brock Larson in Minnesota is huge, you know. So he was on the MMA scene there. What he says is gospel. So he was talking me up to people, and so no one would take the fight with me. I wanted more amateur fights, and we were trying to call it the toughest amateurs, but they just wouldn't fight at the time. So we just went pro right away.
It's weird when you talk about like your beginning and stuff and that whole mindset, because I do jiu-jitsu. I'm a hobbyist. I'm not at the level that you guys are or whatever, but I've been doing it for a while now, and when I see these younger guys come in, it's like there's always this weird. It's nice to see the enthusiasm, but you know that they kind of got to get checked a little too.
Yep.
You know, and that's kind of like where you figure out who's going to stick around and who isn't. It's usually after those first few sessions where it's weird how you have to kind of get beat up to see where it humbles you, but then you figure out if it kind of helps you know that whether or not this is for you. And obviously, this is for you. You're 6 feet tall and you fight at welterweight. I'm 5'11" and I can't even get to. I can't. The last time I was at 170 something pounds, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But so I mean, like, what type of the discipline to stay in fighting shape all the time come from football, or did you pick this up over time?
Well, I mean, I used to fight at 155. I was down at my first had to be 8-9 fights in the UFC were at 155. So that was discipline.
Yeah.
That was more not discipline but stupidity is what I would say. It was more stupidity on the side of there. But when I got in the UFC, I needed the size advantage. I needed that size advantage, but I was killing myself to make weight. And finally, I was getting told a million times, you've got to go up to 170. I moved up to 170. I'm smaller than I'm at 170. I'm smaller now than I was at 155. It's just my body was retaining everything. When I would cut all that weight to 155, I'd get up to 205. Now I really 195. I actually last fight camp, I got up the highest. I started lifting again. I started taking all these protein shakes and pre-workouts because the UFC PI was sending them to me, and I was really focused on putting a little bit of size on because I needed to get a little bit bigger actually to stay at 170. But no, there is discipline, and like you were saying, early on in those days, a lot of people are front runners in the world, and it's the second you get smacked around, you're like, oh, this ain't for me. But I was the opposite. I was one of those guys that I enjoy getting smacked around. Even to this day, if I go into the gym and I'm always winning, I'll leave. I don't want to stick in a gym where I'm winning all the time. So I go, now I'm out here in ATT Atlanta, and we have like 3-4 world champ grapplers. We obviously have Douglas Lima, Diego Lima, some phenomenal strikers that every day I'm getting my ass whooped. If that wasn't happening, I promise you I wouldn't stick around. So I'm always trying to push myself to the limits, and I like the aspect of losing because I want to win so bad that every day I show up to training, I'm motivated to win, and that's something that is a driving factor for me.
Just curious, what were you like a safety when you played football, or what position did you play?
Yeah, in high school, obviously I was linebacker, running back, but when I went to college, I was a little bit too small. I was at 195, so I moved out to free safety when I was there, and so I was out there and I was behind Nick Schomer when I was there, and he ended up getting drafted like 7th round. But I love football even to this day. I definitely, there's some hard feelings I have with. I just wasn't that greatest in I was good in school. It's just the problem was you go to college, you don't have your coaches calling you anymore. You don't have all this. You kind of have all this freedom, and I needed structure. I was a guy that needed structure. Even now to this day, I'll tell you, if I'm not in camp, my coaches are calling me because they're like, listen, let's keep Tony on the straight and narrow because I'll go off, I'll drift out. So I need to be on the straight and narrow. I need these goals and these focus, and I need dates. I need fight dates. So in football, I'd be great during football season, phenomenal. Second football season was over, they would all be worried about me a little bit, like, okay, how do we keep Tony out of trouble? But no, I mean, I love football, but I've absolutely fallen in love with MMA. I own a gym out in St. Cloud, Minnesota now, with Brock and Tyson Chartier. I don't know if you know him, but he's the coach for Rob Font and Calvin Cater, who's main event next and manager for all these guys.
I talking about your what you just talked about, trying to stay out of trouble and staying focused and kind of needing to be in some type of fight camp. How's it been with the whole COVID situation? I mean, I know you had the one fight canceled before the last one against Magny. So like just like right now with nothing, you don't have anything lined up. I haven't heard anyway. How are you staying? Like, are you training with those same set of dudes with the Lima brothers? And like, how do you stay in shape during times like this where it seems hard?
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Well, first I just had knee surgery. So last week I had knee surgery. Just an easy knee scope, getting the meniscus out. So I just had that. I knew I was going to have it going into the Neil Magny fight, I knew I ended up
Oh,
having to get a
wow.
cortisone shot about 2 weeks before the fight,
Oh,
and I was dealing with the knee going into the fight. No excuses for the fight, but I was saying, I went in injured. I knew something was wrong, and so I ended up having knee surgery just last week. And I'm not supposed to train yet, but I trained for the first time today a little bit lightly, and I feel I'm gonna make a good return, and I think that I've had 4 of them before, but there's
mhm.
some other things also going on with the knee that I just need to give a little bit of time to. So that part's tough, like you said. But I was just out in Minnesota seeing my daughter, seeing my family and stuff, and that part definitely motivates me is when I'm around my family a little bit more because they all live in Minnesota. So all my friends and family outside of my training partners, that are close friends here, um, are all in Minnesota. So that part is I'm out here in Atlanta by myself,
Mm.
and just when I don't have a fight booked, it is a little tough staying motivated. But I feel good. I feel good. Just want this knee to heal up and get back at it and see where I go from here.
You're okay. So you're all over the map because on the Tapology has you born in Illinois, fighting
Yep.
out of Boston. Now you went to Minnesota. I noticed that's where all most of your early fights were there in the Dakotas, and then now you're in Atlanta. Your family's in Minnesota. Where does Boston fit into that mix? Did you just live in Boston for a while?
Yeah. So, man, I'm telling you, I just realized I don't know if I'm just one of those people that's just a weird guy, or I don't know what it is. I haven't figured out. I've never lived anywhere other than Illinois because I lived in Illinois until about 8th grade. I haven't lived anywhere more than 3 years.
Hmm.
So I don't know what that means. If I just need change, if I'm just like one of these guys that just doesn't feel good in the same spot forever. But I went to high school in Wisconsin. I went to college in North Dakota a little bit. I lived in Minnesota. I only lived in Minnesota like 2 years, but all my family lives in Minnesota now. All my close friends. Brock Larson's my first coach, who's always in my corner now to this day. Is one of my best friends. Then I moved out to Boston. So I moved to Boston. I was there in Boston for 3 years. And that's when I met Tyson, Rob Font, Kelvin Cater, and all those guys out in Boston. And because I was out at Seton with Mark Delagrati for a while, with Eddie Alvarez was my boxing coach. And then I moved down to Florida. I was down in Florida, ATC Florida, for about 2 years, the last 2 years prior to this year. And now I'm out here in Atlanta for the last year.
Oh, so definitely getting around. Yeah, I mean, I've lived in California my entire life, so I don't even.
That's the
I want
only
to
coast I haven't been on.
And I want to
Right,
get the
man.
hell out of here. Wow,
Yeah.
how does that work? But so you being competitive football, you talked about seeing George St. Pierre and thinking in your mind you could beat
Yep.
him before you realized what the game entailed. Um, you said you had a couple amateur fights. I see you have on the site I'm looking at. It looks like you have 2. You won both of those. You came out the gate. You won a handful of fights. How long did it take you into your pro career or even your amateur career, if that was the case, for you to realize I'm good at this? I think I can compete at a world-class level. And maybe one day I will be in the cage with somebody like George St. Pierre. When did that click for you and you said, well, shit, this is what I'm meant to do?
Yeah, day one.
Really?
Day one, I knew it. I knew that this was what my calling was.
Hmm.
And even to this day, I feel like I've underperformed. And I think that there's a lot more for me to give to the sport and a lot more for my body to give. I mean, I'm only 30 years old. I didn't start training till I was 21 years old. So I think there's still a lot more. I have a lot more in the tank, man. And I've been a fighter since day one. I grew up in downtown Chicago, North Minneapolis, where, I've been struggling my whole life. And I was made to fight, man. I'm telling you right now, I was made to fight. If you met my mother, you would know, like, our family's made to fight, and so I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm happy that I have the opportunity to really be in the moment and enjoy life, at the fullest. And I think that right now I'm just enjoying life. And I knew day one, and that's why right away I didn't leave those mats, and it was because that's the second I got beat up by a 125 pounder. I was like, this is it. And I knew I had it. In my head, I knew. I wrestled only 1 year of high school. I went to state 1 year in, and everyone thought that there was zero chance I would have any success in wrestling, even it's high school, but still, I never wrestled a day until my senior year of high school. I played basketball all the way up till then, and I had success. Football, I had success, and there's just something that I feel like there's nothing I can do in this world that I won't give it all. I won't go all in on and be successful. So it's something but fighting, there's nothing more real than it. And that's what motivated me.
Yeah. I mean, I can't help. I agree with you 100%. One of the things I wanted to ask you, it's your welterweight in the welterweight division. So this past weekend, the main event, there's a lot of discussion as to, who's next and how the rankings should work, or, who should fight for the title next. As a welterweight, I was wondering what your take is on, because it seems like there's people that think it should be Leon Edwards, and then there's people that agree with the ranking that it should be Gilbert Burns. So I was just wondering where you stood.
Yeah, I do. I believe that it should be Gilbert right now. Even though before I was kind of adamant that I thought that Leon did deserve it, and then he had some circumstances, a lot of circumstances. He had so many circumstances come up that really hindered his opportunity. But him not taking that fight when they offered it to him last fight before Masvidal, I think that was a decision that I say that Gilbert is now next in line. Granted, maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe he wasn't able to train. I get that. I understand that. But now the only reason why Gilbert didn't fight was because he got the coronavirus and he was ready to fight, and he's been on a tear. I do think that he deserves the next shot. I feel like Leon should fight Colby Covington, and Masvidal should fight a money fight. I think he should fight a money fight, and then I think that he should fight the loser of Colby versus Leon, or the loser of Usman versus Gilbert. And then I think that should be the next contender fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes all the sense in the world. This is not a knock on Masvidal, because there's nothing wrong with being the second or third best fighter in the world in your weight class. I just don't. I've never met the guy. If I interview him in the future, maybe he'll call me out for this. But I don't know if he'll ever be a world champion in the UFC. And that's not a knock, because he's making a ton of fucking money.
He's made a lot of money.
And I think that there's a lot of fights for him. You talk about money fight. I think McGregor's a good fight. I think getting in there with Colby, getting in there with a Leon Edwards, getting in there with Usman again, I don't think that does a lot for where he's kind of at in his career. And maybe that's a pessimistic view on my part, but that's just kind of how I see. He right now, he basically behind McGregor, he's probably number 2 in the money making. Give or take maybe a name or two that John, I don't know, maybe John Jones, if he has a huge fight.
Big money too, I think, but
yeah, but so with me, I would stay away from those guys. A Wonder Boy rematch, even like a Dos Anjos or something. Somebody who's going to kind of stand in there and throw with him. Seems like that's the trail I would go for him, but that's neither here nor there. But I do agree with you with your assessment that it probably should be Burns right now. He took the Woodley fight when times were not great. He took it late notice. He's been calling out everybody.
I just one thing I gotta say, only because it kind of ties in with what Tony said when he first started with you got beat up by the 125 pounder. One thing I kind of disagree with you, Matt, is because I noticed in the post-fight press conference, like, Masvidal took the loss, and it just seemed he seems focused on a title now. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's changed so much in the 16 years he's been fighting. I kind of feel like, just like the way Tony said, even though he got that first beating, it ignited the flame to make him want to compete and make this his career. I kind of see Masvidal changing focus, if you will. Wanting, he just said today that if he had a choice between Conor and Usman for the title, he said he'd take the title fight as long as he could prepare for it well. So I mean,
well, yeah, but he may do that just because I feel like he knows he's a draw. He knows he's now the A side. Like you were saying, that Conor's the only guy ahead of him that could pull in money, and maybe Khabib. But outside that, it's him. So he knows a rematch, and you sell it for you sell this thing for 3 months, it's still going to sell maybe 1.6, 1.7. Now, if you sold 1.3 then, they
Yeah.
might sell 1.6, 1.7 because, I do think there was parts that I felt like Masvidal exposed Usman. I felt like I was shocked at how I felt like Usman was shying away from Masvidal's strikes, and that part shocked me because I thought that Usman was confident enough in his striking to really unleash that and to grapple at the same time. I thought he would have to mix in grappling, but I feel like he never felt that comfortable on his feet like I thought he would.
Yeah, and let me make it clear. I was rooting for Masvidal. I would love to see the guy become a world champion. I love watching him fight. I just think that where he's at financially right now, avoiding the big wrestlers would be a way to cash in. He's not young.
Right.
And
There's
that's
the reason why he doesn't want to fight Colby, though.
and I think people, not you, you're a prize fighter, but I think people lose the sight a little bit of prize fighting is that's why it's called prize fighting. And McGregor's kind of doing that right now too. I mean, McGregor can call out Khabib all he wants, but the reality is if he beats Cowboy Cerrone 7 times, he makes a lot more money than if he loses to Khabib again. I mean, it's just the reality of the industry. But
Tony,
go ahead.
I got a question for you. Just because of, I mean, you had that one fight booked. I forget who it was supposed to be that got canceled because of the COVID stuff. And then you took this fight with Magny. I mean, I don't know, was that really, because you were already in camp preparing for one person, and then you got a fight with Magny. What's your take on the whole short notice thing? I mean, with 6 days, obviously, I know if it was you, you'd say yes. You seem like obviously you're going to say yes to fights, but just what's your take on that whole short notice thing?
Well, I mean, training for a fight is different than training. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you might be training, you might be in training shape, but you're not in fight shape. It's a different scenario, and I don't think that Masvidal. I've never seen Masvidal in the gym even gas. You know what I mean? So I think that when I was down there for the 2 years, so I think that obviously taking on six days notice, cutting that weight too is what you gotta factor in as well, where your body's not prepared like it normally is to cut that weight. That's even more taxing on the body. So you're taxing the body already.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely played a factor into the fight. And I really do think that Masvidal would have a chance if they ran it back at a full camp. But do I think he deserves it? I don't. I don't think he deserves it. That's where I stand. Is I don't think he deserves it. Do I think he stands a chance after watching that first fight? Yes, and I think that Gilbert Burns gives Usman trouble now after watching that fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Burns was a tough matchup all around for Usman. I feel like they're real close. The skill sets, at least to me, seem like they're close. I mean, Burns, I would say, gets the plus for BJJ, obviously, and then Usman takes a little bit of the wrestling, so he'd have to negate that if they ended up on the ground. But it's the whole division's pretty wild right now. So it'll be interesting to see. The other title fight that happened the other night that has had a lot of people talking because of the people's questionable about the question on the judge's decision is Holloway and Volkanovski. Not a rematch. I stated I wasn't really super into the rematch, although I did on the show pick Holloway to win the rematch. I thought he won the fight. I don't call it a robbery because I think it was close, and I don't like to use that word unless it's blatant. But what was your take on it? Obviously, Volkanovski ends up winning 3-2, essentially split decision. Or I'm sorry, 3-2. How did you see that?
Yeah, I thought that Max won the first 3. I thought he did enough to win the first 3. And Volk came on hard towards the end of the 3rd round, and I feel like he was trying to steal the round. And that's the only thing that kind of sucks with judging is that, I mean, Diego Sanchez made a career on it. It was stealing rounds, towards the end of the round would turn it on. And the judges love to see that towards the end of these rounds, and they almost forget about the rest of the round. So I thought he did enough. I thought he won the fight. But like you said, robbery isn't the word I would use. I would say it's a wrong decision, but I wouldn't say robbery. You know what I mean? Because I can see if you're kind of, you're a fan of something else. If you're a fan of that hard goes towards the end and showing that maybe he felt like Volk was trying to finish more, I don't know, but so I wouldn't say robbery, but I do think it was the wrong decision.
How about you, Ed? What do you think of that fight?
Uh, the Holloway Volkanovski. Sorry,
Yes.
I got an alert from my my family. I mean, I thought Holloway did better. I actually I kind of thought he won when I was watching it, but you know, when the judges, you know, when you involve the judges, you can't really it's hard to undo anything no matter what. I saw FanDuel was offering refunds for folks that bet. So I was like, like I said, you know what, like you can't undo with the judge's decision. But I mean, to say what you will, I know Dana White afterwards said that he'd like to clean up some of the officiating with the refereeing and stuff that went on that night, plus that match. But I mean, I thought Holloway might have done enough to win. I was at, live tweeting the event and stuff. I was because I write that editorial for MMAnews.com. And I was just like, I think he might have won this. And then when I heard the decision, I wasn't shocked, but I was kind of like, okay, it is what it is. To quote Max Holloway, it is what it is. So
Tony, I was at your fight against Alex White a few years back in Phoenix. That fight went to decision. Do you have any experience in your career with decisions that you totally disagreed with? I mean, have you felt you've been wronged by the judges, or were there, on the other side, were there any fights that you honestly didn't think you won that you got the nod? How have the judges been for you?
Did you fall asleep during the Alex White fight?
No, I was probably drinking, but
okay.
I was.
No,
I
I
was
feel
still...
like the Neil Magny fight was wrong. I feel like my last fight with Neil Magny, I thought I won the first 2 rounds, and that he dominated the 3rd round. And I mean, MMA Decision said that 80% of the media outlets all agreed that said that I won the first 2 rounds. I go back to Sherdog right away just to see, because they do that live scoring with the 3 judges. All 3 scored me 29-28, and then to have 2 judges say 30-27 Neil Magny. And then right after the fight, he came up to me. Literally, they announce it because they do the interviews in the back now. So he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, that was bullshit. You won the fight." And so the last fight is the one that I looked to, and was my last fight on the UFC contract. So it was a double dagger, because obviously now all my negotiation, like my me holding the cards is kind of disappear, because the UFC, it doesn't matter what anyone else says. If the judges say you lost, and financial reasons that so that part was tough last fight.
Do you see any way to fix that? I mean, in your opinion, we've talked about judging before, but do you have any? Is there anything that you would do in your mind to fix it? Would you put them in monitored rooms? Would you? I mean, I always thought that the crowd played a role in it, but we've seen right now with no crowds that, in my opinion, the judging's been as bad as ever.
Bad.
Yeah,
so judging is bad. I think that I was thinking about the one thing is, I don't know if we bring in more judges. If we bring in more judges, maybe we bring in 3 out there and 3 on monitors only, or something like that, or try to. We need to figure out something, though. I think that judges should be held accountable as well. I think that that's something that's not done, is that these judges aren't held accountable. And I even thought this weekend with Dos Santos versus Muslim. I don't know if you saw that fight on the undercard, but I thought that Dos Santos got robbed. And I thought that he hurt Muslim twice, once in the first round, once in the second round. And then there was one judge that gave it 30-27 to Muslim. And I always go to MMA Decisions right away just to kind of see what they're saying. Only 2 judges gave it to Muslim, and both those judges were 29-28. So you have one judge that's in the live fight saying 30-27. There's not one judge out of 20, 25 media outlets that all they do is watch fights. All you guys do is watch fights, right? There's nothing else you do. These guys may have other jobs, these judges. They have other jobs. All these guys do is watch fights, and not one judge said 30-27. This judge needs to be held accountable, and he's untrustworthy. And I think that if you hold these guys a little bit more accountable, that to be responsible, to be like, hey, to be invested into what you're doing, that things could change. I don't know if adding more judges is the answer, or having ex-fighters be the judges. I don't know. It's tough. I'm not even sure if fighters know nowadays how to score fights.
I think it's I think the latter thing that you said, as having former fighters do judging, would probably make for better judging in the future. I just don't think there's enough guys, trying to do it, or maybe there's not enough fighters that are not fighting anymore that want to do it, or think about doing it. Just only because it was a couple of years ago. I had the conversation with Renzo Gracie, and it was over some bad judging decision or something to that effect. And one of the things I noticed is that a lot of the judges come from the world of boxing, that they don't understand. They don't understand when you're working off of your back, or attacking submissions off your back, or and getting back to your they kind of just look at the guy on top, and the guys on top, and you could literally just be there and not do anything, but because you're on top, the guy, it scored for the guy on top. So maybe more experienced judges. In my opinion, that's one way to fix it. Just because, I mean, you brought it up, so I figured that you reminded me of that conversation I had with Renzo, and he kind of agreed with me, because I think Richard Steele's MMA judge in some states. Maybe it might even be here in New York. But yeah, I think that's one way to fix it. The you mentioned your fight with Magny. I mean, I think when we broke down that event on this podcast, my concern was that he might have been too big for you, and just because of like you said, you did 155 to 170, and I didn't know about your knee issue until you just said it now. Plus the whole, you were getting ready for one guy, and then you had this fight against Magny. So I just thought it was a culmination of everything, and then you mentioned the knee. I mean, that's the only reason I saw you, the fight turning out the way that it did.
You're in the doghouse. No, but I was thinking, like, I don't use the excuses, the judging thing, as fighters don't want to be judges. I think that the UFC, you're talking about $1 billion company, that if they really wanted ex fighters to be judges, these guys are looking for jobs after fighting. Man, I'll tell you right now, I've had 15 fights in the UFC. I'm not ready. I walk away right now. I walk away with nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not walking away to, where I'm retired and I'm happy and I have money for my kids to go to college and to prosper in life later on. I need to get another job. You know what I mean? So that excuse, I don't think that. I think that the UFC has the financial things, and I think that if they have educated judges, that they could easily get these commissions to approve these judges and to get them in there and judge these fights.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could. I think the commissions in certain states, you're going to run into problems because it's kind of a mob, inside family business almost,
right?
Where it's so tightly, you have to know somebody basically to get the job. Behind the scenes, when do you know the judges for your fight? Are you told ahead of time who's going to be judging your fight, or do you find out just as you're basically in the cage?
I mean, I guess I've never even listened for the judges or anything like that. I try to, I try to believe that they're going to be impartial. I try to believe that they're going to be true, and just because, the only thing, I mean, as personal, like even my buddies, like I might be like rooting for them and whatnot, but I feel like I might be harsher on my friends than I am than a random fight, and so I try to be impartial on all fights. Obviously, root for the people I want to root for, but I feel like I'm a pretty honest about scoring, because I feel like it's not simple, but most of the times it's pretty clear, not clear, but even who's winning. You could see it, like you could see it if you're watching the fight fully, like you could see it. Yeah. And then sometimes they come out with these stupid ass stats. They're like, oh, look at these strike count or this strike significant. Fuck, those strike counts don't mean nothing. Why the UFC is using those to even talk about fights sometimes makes absolutely no sense. You know what I mean? Because there's sometimes, I get it if like you have nothing to talk about, but you know what I mean? If there's nothing else to talk about, and maybe at the end of the fight you want to say, oh, these are the strikes, but strikes are lying. Like strikes, you could tell false stories from stats football, NFL, every sport tells lies about stats all the time just to make everything look a lot better than what it looks.
Yeah. Though the reason I asked about the judges is, I mean, it seems extreme, but there's not that many judges across the country that do the bigger events. I wonder if they told you ahead. I mean, if you knew 2 weeks in advance who was going to be your judges, do you not you that you train for the judge, but if you know there's a judge out there who in his last 4 fights has given the edge to somebody in a round who's won only the last 10 seconds of a round, would that be something that, I mean, or is that just too much to even try to think about her? I mean, the same, I guess, goes for, well, not so much for referees. I was going to ask you about referees, and I'll just piggyback it off of it. Is there any referees? I mean, I don't know, you got to be careful, I guess, maybe what you say, but are there any referees that you would favor? I guess you can say that. And I guess the second question would be, is there anybody that you'd rather not be in the cage with them working the fight?
Yeah, not really. So the same thing with the judging, actually. So like personally, like for me, I try to control only what I can control. You know what I mean? And last thing you ever want to do is piss off a judge or piss off a referee. I promise you that. So like when there's some of these guys that come out and say, hey, I hate this ref and don't want this ref, it's very detrimental. I think that because easily it's like being in an NBA game or NFL game and pissing off the ref. You know, you don't want to do that. Like, what, are you crazy? Like you want them to like just call or be, you know, a baseball player and talk shit to the ump, that the one that's calling strikes when you're batting. Like that seems like absolutely stupid, right? So I think that you only can control what you can. But do I think needs an overhaul of the system? I do. I think that I just truly believe that you need to be held accountable. And it's the same as these fighters. Like, okay, we lose, we can be cut. We got we lose all this money. But when you have a bad judging experience or a bad reffing experience, right? There's nothing that happens. Oh, some people on Twitter are talking shit about you. That's it. You know what I mean? And then Dana and all of them are kind of, other than a couple referees, but he talks a little crap about the judging, but not enough. They just announced today that their same judges are going to be out Wednesday. So they're obviously in Wednesday and Saturday. So they obviously don't think there is that big of a problem with the judging.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it could be a logistics thing too, because they're all on Fight Island where everything's closed off for that 10-mile radius. So that's probably why that's the case there. They're only there for that one and one more, and then that's that. But you know, as far as accountability, I do think that would help. I mean, what's the judge? Doug Crosby has openly stated like he doesn't like anybody from the Sarah Longo squad. You know, and like he's got a gripe with them or whatever. So I mean, there's history there that if they hear that he's judging on cards that there are, especially in New York, they're kind of just like, oh, are you kidding me? Why is that guy even there? And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard his name, even never mind the UFC, outside of there, when I've sat for I've covered Bellator events out here in Connecticut on the East Coast, and there's always when I hear his name, he's always attached to a score that's like from left field. So
right.
I do agree with you about. I mean, if they should pull those guys aside enough times for if they have a history and ask them like.
I think that if that's really your opinion on it, if there's one gym in this world that any judge or referee is like, hey, I hate this gym and I don't want no part with them, they should be done. Yeah. They shouldn't have any part in this sport.
Yeah.
Your job is to be unbiased no matter what. So if you really, for some reason, if you can have so much hatred or so much dislike in your heart for a whole gym, what's saying that there's not more people out there that you don't like or just like a certain thing that triggers you and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I hate this guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that instantly if someone has those feelings that boom, you're gone. I don't see any position in this sport that you belong.
Yeah.
You're being real open about this stuff, so I'm gonna ask a couple. You know, nothing that's gonna throw you under the bus with anybody. But one of my pet peeves when watching a fight, when it's being reffed, is, and I realize in a 3-round fight it can really sway the fight, but I get tired, man, of seeing dudes get kicked in the nuts or poked in the eyes and no points taken away. What's the fighter's perspective on that? I mean, I've always joked about saying if you're losing a fight, you might as well grab the cage, poke him in the eyes, and then kick him in the nuts, because you get one. You get one of each free. You know, is the way it seems to me. And I don't know. it seems like it sways so much of the fight, and you see so much momentum change.
Yeah.
Even if tough dudes act like it doesn't, anybody who's been in that situation realizes that you can't just shake that off in as quick as you do generally. What is your opinion on that? Would you prefer more points taken away? Would you rather refs just let shit fly, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say eye pokes. I do believe that eye pokes should be a point. I do think that I've never had an eye poke. I've never even been close to poking someone in the eye before. So I've still never understood how these guys are open-handed, pointing their fingers out, trying to grab these. I mean, I've always had my hand like this, but even when they attack, my first reaction isn't to stick my hand out. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's my first reaction. I think that if you take away those points from that eye poke, that you're going to teach a reaction of when you stick your hand out. It's the punch. It's not to touch them or push them away. You know what I mean? I think that your first reaction should be to hit your opponent. You know what I mean? And I think that the eye poke should be a point. The nut shot, I think, is just depending on exactly what the circumstance is. Sometimes they're taking at the same time, and one guy's going for a leg kick, and the other guy's driving in. So there's different parts of a nut kick, but I think that the guy standing in a regular stance and you just full on kick him in the nuts, I think it should be a point. You know, I do think so. I don't think there should be the warning because I don't know. I've only kicked the guy 3 times, maybe ever in training. So I don't know how it's happening 24/7. I mean, it happens like 7 times every single fight card. So I don't know what's happening, but I think that same thing I'll resort to is that you should be held accountable.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a professional. You should be held accountable, and it's the same strikes that you've thrown a million times in training. I think that you should be held accountable for what you do, and if you're getting points taken away, you need to train smarter and work your technique. And I think that taking points away is going to hold people accountable. Same ways I think that the judging and referees should be held accountable.
Then real quick, that's the judging side. I've always been argument, I fought for the more 10-10 rounds.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would be on? I mean, you talk
Yeah.
about the Magny fight. I mean, and your future and getting paid and stuff. A draw looks a lot better to the head chiefs than a loss, even if the people can watch the fight and see that it was a close fight that you easily could have won. Would you be all on a board with 10-10 rounds and maybe
100%.
having 3 or 4 or 5 draws on your record?
Yeah, no, I think that there should be 10-10 rounds. If it always doesn't make sense to me because some people are so against 10-10 rounds, like, oh, you shouldn't be a judge if you're scoring a 10-10 round. You have half the people scoring this way, and then you have the other half scoring the other way. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a 10-10 round. Just put all 3 of you score 10-10. Let's see someone do some work and really see who the real winner is, instead of it just coming straight down to judging, and the judges have all control of these guys' career trajectory. You know, I think that that's the tough spot is also there's the win bonus on the line. I think that win bonuses should go away as well.
I agree. Yeah. No, I mean, it's just the judging
Or
is just
smaller chunk. I think it's smaller chunk. I think you should get upfront money at 75% and a win bonus at 25%.
I feel like Bellator kind of does that a little bit, or there's a little more flexibility. A lot of their guys don't have win bonuses; it's straight up cash to show up and fight. But I've also seen some guys who, they're bigger names, like a Chandler might make like 80 to 100 to fight, and then if he wins like another like 40,000 or something on top of it,
Right.
as opposed to it being double. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I'm trying to think of the fight. There's been a few of them where you've had fights where it's like there's literally been like one punch thrown. I feel like Romero, Adesanya, the first round of that fight, didn't that have like 3 strikes thrown in the whole round? And then none of the judges gave it 10-10. And I'm going, that's a 10-10 round. You don't win a round for punching the air one time, So I think that would be a major swing. And I know a lot of people don't like draws. Coming up in MMA, the old Pancrase days, in a lot of Japanese organizations, they have guys have 10, 12, 15 draws on their record. I think like Imanari, for example, I think he's got about 10 draws or something like that. It's just because you don't give a win or a loss to somebody who didn't win or lose a fight. If it's even, it's even. So I'd love to see that change. The judges, the 5 judges they use in Glory, I think that would help. What is your opinion on open scoring? I don't mean to take Ed
I
out.
100% think that open scoring is the best case scenario for everything. And I think that the one argument that Dana tried to say was, oh, if you have open scoring, the guy that's in the lead is gonna kind of run away. You know what I mean? Or try to stay with. Yeah, but the other guy's gonna be chasing him down, trying to kill him.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the other guy's like, shit, what do I gotta do? I gotta go try to go kill this guy. So it's like, okay, and then believe me, the guy pretty much knows. Most of he's easily won the first 2 rounds. He pretty much knows. But in close round scoring, your corner's telling you, like in the Magny fight, my corner both said, hey, you won these first 2 rounds. You know what I mean? Obviously, Magny thought the same thing. Their corner's telling him that he's lost his first 2 rounds. You got to go finish Tony. But if live scoring came out, shit, everyone would have been shocked at that point. But it's also, I think it makes more exciting fights. I truly believe that you'd have one guy being shocked in the middle of the fight, and everyone in the crowd would be shocked, but it'd be like, hey, you got to go kill this guy. Something's got to change. So and I think I'm fully game for it.
So for you, it's not, because I know the counter argument that I've heard is, it's a distraction, but for you, it'd be a motivator.
I don't know how it could be a distraction. I mean, you're being as real as it comes. Like we're talking about the realest sport in the world.
Yeah.
And you're talking about these guys' career on the line and everything's on the line. It's like, I don't know if there's real, like if a real fighter, if you ask the fighter right before the fight, hey, if we could tell you the scores in between rounds, would you do it? Yeah, of course they would. Why wouldn't you? You want to know.
Yeah.
Hey, was that mostly a close round? You're like, shit, who won? Why do you want to leave it up to the judges? No, I want to know now, so I know next round that I got to turn it up. I got to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, for every boring fight it might create, I mean, I just can't even imagine what like the 5th round for Volkanovski Holloway would have looked like if both of those guys would have known for a fact it was 2-2. I mean, you might end up with a boring fight every card, but you might end up with 2 or 3, fight of the decades if people need to, comes down to that, especially with a title on the line. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that should change. I think the UFC has the pull to do it. Historically, they really don't seem like they've ever wanted to kind of put their neck on the line. I think this is a time that, with the sport where it is right now, that it's either put your neck on the line or something's not gonna. It's gonna screw somebody really big. It already is. I mean, we talk about your fight, perhaps Holloway. I mean, it's changing people's lives, not them being it.
Why not?
Exactly.
Why not? Why not do it on the prelims then? Hey, let's test it. Let's test it. Hey, we'll do the so-called Fight Pass prelims. Let's test it on there. Let's do some test runs. But if you're not gonna, if you don't think that, if half the people say it's gonna be better, half to say it's not, let's test it. You don't have to test it in the main card right away. You don't got to test it on those 5 rounders right away. But let's test it on the prelims. Let's see what people think about it, and then let's go from there.
That's a good idea.
Sounds good to me. I mean, they got the Contender Series. They got the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, there's plenty of ways that they can test it. It's being used in Invicta right now. And I know they've used that, I think, for the last, 4 or 5 half dozen events. And I haven't heard any complaints from anybody. And their shows have been exciting. So we haven't had a case of somebody running away. Plus, if somebody's running away in a round, I mean, literally trying to run away, that's where the referee's job is to step in and start taking points away for being timid. So if everybody's doing their jobs, I don't think it would be a huge thing. But, I appreciate you coming on the show. We kind of swayed towards a lot of referee and judging, but it's a conversation that we don't get a lot to have with somebody who's opened up about it and be willing to, say their opinions as much as you. And you being a UFC fighter, for us is a treat to have somebody that's competed at that level. Why don't you throw out your Twitter handles, your podcast name, give us every way fans can get a hold of you or follow you.
Yeah, my Twitter's at Tony Rocco Martin. Instagram's at Anthony Rocco Martin. And Rocco and Ryan show with Ryan Gerald. So make sure you guys look out for us. And I'll add my stuff on there and make sure I start being a little bit better on social media.
And that's your podcast is on YouTube. Is it on all the audio ones as well?
Yep, it's on YouTube. What else do we have? I'm not exactly sure. You're asking.
Yeah, no, but it is, there is an audio only version of it. You guys have iTunes and all that other stuff.
I
Probably
think so. I think so. Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, well, fans can follow us at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram. Check this interview out on allaccessmma.com. Tony, thanks for joining us, man. I'd love to have you on again in the future because there's obviously a ton of stuff that I'd like to talk about. You being a big fight fan would be more than welcome. I think it could be a conversation we could have a lot. I'd like to dig into more about you just being a fan of the sport. So thanks for joining us, man, and best wishes, best with your knee, and we look forward to rooting for you in your next fight.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Hope you heal up soon, and if you get something booked, by all means, you want to plug it, let us know. We'd love to have you back. Take care.
I got you guys. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
You too.
Bye.